Okay. Now
If
let's have
if you sign up too, can you go to all 3 days if you want?
yes. I
Okay.
believe I believe that gets you into all 3 days.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I got a little tired of waiting for the Neocon site to open up. Let's try this again. Oh, there we go. That's better.
And that's different from next week, Tuesday.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Not the same. Yeah, really. So
Are you
this
going all 3 days
no,
for Neocon? Just the 6th.
I can only go on. Yeah, I can only go part of the day on the 6th.
Okay.
So you don't really need to go and see me there. Um, you can just go and enjoy the wonderland of Neocon. Um, but it can be helpful to, if at least go in with someone who has been there before. So if you register,
Is it important, sorry, to register with our like Harper email or does it really matter?
I don't know if they have a student, like a lower student price. They
Okay.
might. They used to do.
And if somebody else wanted to come, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. If
Well, I was just wondering if somebody wanted to come along with us, is that an option as well, or should we really just be kind of going on our own?
it it doesn't have to be just Harper students. You know, anyone
Okay.
interested,
Just as long as they register.
as long as you register and pay. Yes. So here,
Okay.
attendee registration. Here's the form to fill out. You can skip this step if you're trying to look up alumni. You don't have to do that. So here's a da 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 da. Yeah, I think it might not let us see. It won't let us go to the payment until we go through all of this stuff. It's 25. I paid $25 to go to it. There is information about like vaccine. Like there's a requirement that you be vaccinated or have a negative test. But as I said earlier, they have an app, like a link to an app where you upload your vaccination information. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put that information on some app somewhere. I'm going to just bring my. I took a picture of my vaccination card with my phone, and I will bring that with me and show them that I am vaccinated.
Oh, so we can take a picture of the vaccination card. We don't have to bring the actual card itself.
Um, that's what I've done. I mean, you might
Yeah, okay, okay.
to be safe, you could bring the actual card. But I'm still trying to call and get through to somebody to have that to, um, have them confirm the process of doing that because I don't want to get there and, have them say, oh no, you were supposed to use the app. And I would say, well, I'm not using the app. I don't want you to have that information on the app.
Yeah, right. I would rather just bring my card.
And the less information you put out there, the better. So yeah, so that neocon. So here, like about neocon exhibit, there like you can explore exhibitors, floor plans, neocon floor by floor. Um, there are tons of people. People come, go to neocon from all over the country, all over the world. Probably less. I'm sure it's smaller this year. But since it was canceled last year, there are a lot of people who are just really ready for it to come back.
Is it like booths and you just like go see things, or is it just the normal places that are in the mart? Or how does it work?
It is a lot of what happens is it's in the showrooms. So the showrooms are open. They have other places where there is, yeah, it's really just, the mart is open and they have things going on, like here. So here the exhibitors are, this is just the A's. These are like, Freeform. I like Freeform. They make interesting stuff. They're up on the 10th floor. They do a lot of like partitions and like dividers, like these sort of like membranes with acrylic epoxy. It's actually, a lot of them they do. It's like a lot of screens and partitions and things like that. That's what they do. So, that's just one. There are hundreds of exhibitors and showrooms. So it's nice that it's happening this year. Normally it happens in June, but they pushed it back to the fall. And so there. So there's your some more info about Neocon. Okay, so so here this is so the terms Middle Ages and medieval are often interchangeable. Now this residential architecture is still largely like that we still have from this era is that of the wealthy, the ruling class. So the some things that you should know about medieval interiors and furnishings. That in general, even like the kings, landowners, they were nomadic in a way. The when they were this was a period of time when there was a lot of war, famine, disease, and if you were a wealthy landowner, someone who had you didn't just have one house or estate, you had several, and they would move from one to another when they needed to get away from all like war or famine or disease. And so that meant that a lot of their furniture was either portable or it was built in and immensely heavy and was just kind of part of the architecture. So like chests for transporting belongings, storage like armoire or cupboard, chairs, stools. These were something that could be loaded up on carts and moved from one house to another. They also they didn't have a lot of furniture. They had what they needed, and a lot of the interiors don't they didn't have a lot of furniture in them. Okay. So someone's importance or status, I guess, would be strengthened by visual means. Dennis, what are you doing? He's got a catnip toy. He's tearing something apart in the dining room. I think it's a catnip toy. Okay, so visual reinforcement of someone's status was important. And like, they have like the throne or seat of honor, place higher than everybody else's. There might be like something like a canopy or what's called a sparver, like a canopy over a chair. Clearly, it's an important chair. There was a type of like a piece of furniture called a stepped buffet. You'll see an image of it. And this is all stuff that's in your the third chapter of the Smith book. The stepped buffet was where they would display some of their most expensive, like like some of their nicest dinnerware, metalware, like gold, stuff like their valuables. And the more steps, the higher your status. And this is something where people would kind of sometimes, some upstarts might cheat a little bit and like put an extra step on the buffet, even though they might be of lower rank, in an effort to improve their status. But you might have like a 3-stepper or a 4-stepper or a 5-stepper, but the more steps to your buffet, the higher your rank. Common seating, benches and stools, are relatively simple. Beds with canopies and curtains. In the early 14th century, elaborate displays of like interiors. They might fit out rooms that they never lived in, so that when they had visitors, they could show them these perfectly appointed rooms that nobody ever used. So furniture was used as a way to present an appearance, or like present your image to your rivals or subjects. Checking my notes here. Yes, materials. Wood was often made of oak. Exotic woods, such as those used by the Romans that came from Africa, were not available. Tapestries appear, so like a woven image, like a something like an image that's woven into fabric. The Bayeux tapestry, which is a very simple one, is it looks like a child's drawing. Really, it's big, it's charming in its simplicity, but it really marked an important, almost like a technological achievement. Except for churches and monasteries, like libraries. So let's see. Churches, monasteries, libraries had some of the first specialized furnishings, and like bookcases. Libraries, monasteries, churches were places where books were held. A lot of, almost everybody was illiterate in Europe at this time, in like the 15th, 14th, 13th century, 12th century. Like the literacy rate was like, a good literacy rate would be like 5% of like a region, like a population. It just wasn't something that people did. A lot of people was considered, like, if they were agricultural laborers, serfs, for example, why would you teach them how to read? They don't need to know how to read. They just need to know how to make sure that the crops come in. So education was minimal for most people. The church was where, Christian church is where you have a lot of, like where you have education, really any church. you know, in Europe, like in what is you know, present day Spain, most of Spain was Islamic for a big chunk of the Middle Ages, um, and so there are Muslims in like, you know, in like southwestern Europe, and of course, you know, Jewish scholars, Christian scholars, Muslim scholars. Those are people who, those are the people that were educated. Okay, and you know, one of the reasons I guess there are three different ways that we know about furniture: who had it, how much they had, what it looked like. Artwork. You see furniture in represented in like illuminated manuscript paintings, or just in like, you know, panel paintings. A lot of like the stories of Christianity were presented in contemporary interiors. So artwork, inventories. Some of the wealthy, they had inventories of their belongings, and so we know that they had a certain amount of certain types of furniture. So that tells us that those things did, you know, these things, you know, like these certain types of furniture existed. And then in the Middle Ages, especially, there are a few rare occasions when we actually have the furniture piece. So in any like age, there are different ways that we know, like with the Greek, like we know about the klezmos chair of the Greeks because it is represented in artwork. Really, we see all the furniture, like there are a lot of furniture pieces of theirs represented in artwork. With the Romans, some of like their, like, you know, woven reed furniture, like wicker or something like that. There are stone carvings that represent that stuff. And we're fortunate with the Egyptians that a lot of their furniture was, like what we have, a lot of that stuff was entombed with pharaohs, and so it just survived when normally it would not, because of the dry climate and entombed in stone, and some of it plated in gold. Okay. All right. So here is a medieval estate, Penshurst Place. So you can see there are Gothic features to the window tracery, and on the left side you can see some of like the pointed arch and this sort of like truss ceiling. The ceiling is beautiful. I love the wooden like truss structure of the ceiling. It's quite beautiful. That's the kind of thing that would, you know, would be like covered up in a church. And so you see
Would that have been oak as well?
That would likely be oak, yes. Oak is a very strong wood, and it's also, if you ever had to try to cut wood with like oak with a handsaw, it's a hard wood, so it's durable. Okay, so you can see little bits of furniture, big space, and everything is usually just kind of like up out on the edges against the wall. Here's what a banquet hall would look like in use. When it wasn't in use, all of like these big, like kind of like trestle tables would have been put away and stored out of sight. All right, here is from a illuminated manuscript. So illuminated manuscripts, before printing, books were written out by hand. Teams of monks would sit and copy texts. You know, they were scrivener, they were scribes, or you know, I guess there were also like or scriveners. And this is a representation of Charles V sitting in an X-framed seat. There's that sort of like sparver hovering over him. And the fleur-de-lis design, that is a French symbol. And you can see there's like the border is like has like it looks like a like a architectural window design. Another illuminated manuscript. You can see in the back right corner the stepped buffet. Beautiful colors in this painting. Something else. You can see the throne or seat of honor up on a raised platform or dais. Other seating is lower. So the whoever was the king or lord of this place is sitting in the highest position. So literal like literally higher than everybody else. And this is a late medieval, kind of like really more like early, like what could be considered the Northern Renaissance. But I show you this because it has this Gothic interior of like a Flemish, like Flemish interior, which is present day part of Belgium. Maybe Netherlands, depends on exactly where this is. But you can see the pointed arches on the interior. So it's a nice example of like so we have some idea of what interiors look like in the like late Gothic era. I mentioned like Northern Renaissance. So the Renaissance really started in Italy, in the city of Florence, and it is when the Italians started to rediscover and achieve some of the things that the Romans were able to do. Actually, a lot of what the Romans were able to do, and they really brought it all back. That Renaissance means rebirth. It's a creative term that was applied later. I think it's appropriate because compared to what some of the even the late Middle Ages looked like in terms of sophistication, it is a great leap forward. So Dirk Boutz was he knew about perspective, linear perspective, in terms of representing three-dimensional space and depth as we see it. And so the presence of perspective, like accurate linear perspective, tells me that this would be like Northern Renaissance. I took a history course in Northern Renaissance art back when I was in graduate school, and this is definitely part of it. Another interior. Again, the presence of this, like the application of linear perspective, tells me that they're technically past the Middle Ages, but the interior is medieval. The interior is Gothic. So you see the type of bed with the, it's like this valance around it and the curtain. I love those little like landscape out the window way, way, way in the background. Really like just beautiful stuff. And just see like the kinds of, they presented the interior presumably realistically. You can see some of this like, down here, damn you. Sorry, this mouse, man. Down at the bottom on this this bench, the lower part of it is some chip carving of a design, which is really just it would have been like a flat front, and then this design is carved into the surface. All right, here is from Florence in the 14th century or the 1300s, right before the Renaissance. Sparsely furnished. A lot of the work goes into the painting or the treatment of the wall surfaces. And you see the crib is the side of the crib is just a flat, like a plank. It's cut from a plank of wood. You see this with some of the furniture where, parts of it, like the back of the entire back of piece of a piece of furniture might just be like a shape cut from a plank of wood. Mm-hmm. Notice the what looks like a tapestry or something hanging on the wall, but you see on the side walls you don't see any depth to it. That's painted to look realistic on the wall, but it's flat. That's the trompe-l'oeil effect. So you can see that flat plank of the side of that trestle table. The trestle table usually has almost like a long bar going down the center as a structural support through the middle of it. All right, here it is, the Bayeux Tapestry, commemorating the Battle of Hastings, commissioned around 1090. Simplistic, childlike representation. Simplistic, by the way, means excessively simple. If you're referring to something as simple as more like general, or even saying I like that, that's simple, that's accurate. Simplistic carries a negative connotation. Not bad, but just it's it's simplistic, meaning it's too simple. So I love this thing because it's this is where they were at. We could laugh about it, and I do laugh about it because it's hilarious. But it's where they were at. What are you gonna do? You're gonna I made excellent drawings when I was a kid, and they look like this. Here is another tapestry later, 1488. Or commissioned around 1480. So you can see this one is much more sophisticated in terms of its representation. It's very crowded. This is kind of a medieval thing where they would just pack everything in. There's a Latin term, horror vacui, which means a fear of empty space. That is sometimes on display in art. These are some later replicas. It's Gothic revival stuff of Gothic storage cupboards. And here, I love this thing. It's an English chest made from a solid log. It's just hollowed out, and they put a lid on it and iron straps to hold it together. It's tough. It's what Thor carries his stuff around in. Here is an English boarded chest of oak with chip carved roundels. You can still learn chip carving to this day. You can go to the Chicago School of Woodworking. They've got a few people that teach courses in chip carving. So very, nice. It's a nice decorative technique. But this you can see is relatively simple. So 1200s. And then here, a little, a couple centuries later, this is panel and panel and frame. So the panels are separate pieces, and the frame like this, like there would be like little like a tongue and groove, like a slot in the frame, and you slide the panel in. That panel has carved with ornament called linen fold. There's a church 1 block away from me. It's a Gothic revival church from the early 20th century, and it has like you see like on the doors they have linen fold carving on them. Here, a little bit more detail. That's more like it. You can see when you go from like that to that to that, shows some progress. This is a poplar is a wood, so poplar chest from Italy, Tuscany, in northwestern Italian peninsula. And a few surviving pieces of furniture. I think these might be lost because this is the best, old black and white reproductions like this. Wars in the 20th century, fires, destroyed a lot of stuff. There's artwork that's gone from World War II, World War I. So, but here, so you have the similar, like that, crossing, sort of curving X, a little bit of like an attempt at some upholstery. I mean, really, fabric around, like with like some like stuffing in it, will give you like a padded cushion for the seat. Upholstery was pretty elementary in these days. You can see the these like nails attached, sort of like these little like big, so like I guess decorative nails holding the upholstery on. So folding armchairs. On the right is an illustration. Italian iron stool. I assume there was a cushion that went with that. It's Italy, so they're going to make iron stuff. The Romans were really like iron and stone, so I guess they picked up a little bit of that. I like the sort of slender frame of it, though. It's leather straps. Maybe there was no cushion. So here a little bit like half timber construction for residential architecture. This was like this timber construction and then filled in with with plaster. This is it doesn't get quite as cold in England as it does in like places like Massachusetts. So this kind of like the half timber construction. When the English were colonizing the Americas, they tried building this stuff in like places like Massachusetts, but the winters were just way too cold. Those walls didn't have enough. They had to make the walls solid. But you can see there's like a design with the timber, and then it's filled in with a plaster. And this, you see like the way the upper floors get a little farther out. Apparently, in the olden days of residential taxation, the taxation, like the property you owned was taxed based on the square footage of the ground floor. And they assumed if you went up, it would just multiply by the number of floors. And so to get around that, they made the upper floors bigger by having these project out a little bit. I don't know how much that actually gets you, but this is what I've read. Looks like it's about to come down, but you know, this house has been around for a few centuries, so not bad. All right, I think that's it. Yeah. Yeah. So now, one thing I also want to mention here: the tapestries. Valuables had to be portable like the furniture, and so rather than have like someone who was wealthy, rather than having a like a large painting, like a large detailed painting, might instead have a large tapestry that could be rolled up and taken with you. If you had a painting this size, you're leaving it, and then your rival who's invading your territory is going to get it. And they might keep it, they might burn it and leave it for you to find if you ever come back. Who knows what. But so things were like, they couldn't be heavy, so like heavy, like gold-laden furniture or like valuables were really not desirable. Okay. There's your Middle Ages. Are there any questions about this? Is it interesting? You betcha.
Some of it's interesting.
Some of it's interesting.
I'm just being honest. Like, there are some parts of it that I don't find interesting. I don't really love like the medieval period, and I don't I don't find tapestries to be. I find the way they made the tapestries very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't find like it's not something I would personally, have in the home or whatever, but
Sure.
I understand that it was a part of their time.
Definitely.
Me
It was a way to make big art.
Right.
I literally have a tapestry on my ceiling.
Excellent.
Oh my goodness. You should show us. Show us the tapestry.
Hold on.
Like my camera's off because I'm. Oh, well, see, that's really pretty.
Yeah.
And so, like, my room is like all blue and like white, so I think it goes.
Yeah, that's cool.
Really well.
Yeah, that's a beautiful. That's really pretty. I just don't. I don't know if it's something about like
I
the
wanted
older
to fill this.
tapestries.
But sometimes it might be about subject matter too.
Yes, a lot of it is subject matter.
And oops, let me go to yeah. So there are like when we have like later in like when we talk about the like Baroque era, like Louis XIV and the French from like that period of time, they established workshops that wove tapestries, and one of them is still making tapestries, and they make really gorgeous stuff. And I think the let me see here. Yeah, I'm sure I have it in here. Give me just a second. Uh-huh. All right, we're going to look at, so yeah, sometimes it is the subject matter. Sometimes it's maybe the process. You're like, it's okay. But watch this. So this is going ahead a few cents, to a little bit farther ahead. But here, this is in the course materials section, which is over here, down to process videos, down to tapestry weaving at Gobelin. I'm gonna make you watch tapestry weaving now. It's beautiful.
Tapestry weaving is a living art, and an art with a long history. To see a tapestry up close is to experience the hands-on nature of its making.
Oh my God.
The art of tapestry weaving reached new heights in France in the 17th century, when Louis XIV set up the Royal Tapestry Manufactory at the Gobelin, a place that still exists today in Paris. There, tradition still informs the making of contemporary art, knowledge and creative inspiration handed down at the exact same site.
It's enclosed, a bit beyond the reach of time. It can seem anachronistic in the world in which we live, when everything has to do with speed. Here, we take the time to do things with humanity and soul.
It's almost like macrame.
In Louis XIV's time,
Yes.
designing a tapestry began with a single artist who often planned an entire series and may have delivered early sketches. Other draftsmen honed the design. Today, similarly, a contemporary artist creates an original work with a tapestry in mind, but it's the weaver who interprets it.
A weaver needs to love drawing above all. You have to have a lot of imagination, and you have to be creative.
From a copy of the artist's work, the weaver has drawn essential lines onto strips of clear plastic. These are positioned against the loom's vertical warp threads, and the lines are redrawn. The markings in ink will serve as a visual guide for weaving. Next, the color palette is decided, and threads will be custom dyed to match the tapestry's design. The colored and textured threads of a tapestry form the weft. 17th century tapestries were made of wool for strength, silk for luminosity, and silver or gold thread for showing off a patron's wealth. Whether wool, silk, or some other material, weft must be dyed to have a color, and this requires a dye expert.
For me, you can't even call it a profession. I actually don't feel like I'm coming to work. It's really magical to see a color being born.
For hundreds of years, dyes came from plants, minerals, and insects ground into powder. The process of using them was challenging. Formulas differed depending upon the color and the material to be dyed. Temperatures for dye baths were tough to keep constant, with vats over wood fires. Now, chemical dyes are used. Infinite hues are possible using just red, yellow, and blue, carefully measured out. A bath of non-mineral water is heated. Dye is added. The weft soaks. Several hours later, the threads are pulled out and compared to the intended color. Adjustments might be made. More dye, longer soaking. When the color is perfect, the weft is hung to dry. In another area of the Gobelin, the dyed threads are wound onto spools for storage. When the weft is needed, it's transferred from a spool to the weaver's main tool, called a bobbin or broche. A bobbin can hold a single color or a combination of colorful threads twisted together. Now the weft is ready for the loom. In the 17th century, the production of large tapestries required huge looms, and at the Gobelin, there were two types, the horizontal and the vertical. Now it's the vertical loom. Thick strands of undyed wool, called the warp, form the structure of a tapestry, and on a vertical loom, they're especially noticeable. Before weaving begins, the loom is bare. The warp must be prepared according to the tapestry's specifications. In a process called warping, a single continuous thread is wound between a metal wheel and a wall railing to form loops. After a set number of loops, the process is repeated with a new warp thread. Each bundle of warp is braided. At the empty loom, the braided threads are arranged, perfectly spaced, across a wooden bar with metal teeth. The bar is hoisted up and suspended from the loom's top beam. The braids are undone and threads pulled down and attached to the lower beam. Once the warp is on the loom, the next step is to add tension. The warp is loosened and tightened until tension is just right. The last step is to add heddles, a system of looped twine attached to the warp, which will enable the weaver to move threads while weaving.
The weaver's role is that she does it all, from beginning to end. I speak from the point of view of the weaver, who invests a part of herself in the work.
A weaver sits behind a loom, facing the back of a tapestry. As she works, she occasionally looks between the warp threads to see the front of the tapestry reflected in a mirror. She also sees a reflection of the cartoon, a copy of the design being woven, which hangs on the wall behind her. When the mirror is turned just right, the reflection is aligned perfectly with the area being woven and the markings on the warp threads. The weaver's bobbin, or broche, is used like a needle to hold weft and guide it between the warp threads. Each one holds a particular color and hangs from the back of the tapestry, ready to be picked up and used again. The end of the bobbin is used to tamp down passages of weft, or a metal comb is used. To make a tapestry, the weft is woven over and under the warp threads in a horizontal direction. A row from right to left is followed by a row left to right. Eventually, the warp will be completely covered by weft. To weave a passage, the weaver pulls on a heddle to uncross odd and even sets of warp threads. This brings one set forward, and in the space, or shed, between the warps, the bobbin can be guided through. To weave a narrow passage, using the heddles isn't always necessary. Like a harpist plucking strings, a weaver pulls a small group of warp threads forward. The weaver's skill and experience enable her to accomplish not only a complex design, but to create a textile that's structurally sound. Even today, a tapestry takes years to make. A finished tapestry is a celebration, honoring a work of art and the people who created it.
We are surrounded by history. We can't really speak of the spirit of the old weavers, but we acknowledge this glorious past and try to carry on ourselves.
There.
Okay, wow.
Amazing.
That blows my mind. That's amazing.
So it's nice to see what goes into it, like how it's made. Um,
How long does that take? I feel like I would go crazy doing that.
A lot of patience.
The
It's,
video said years.
Yeah.
yeah, they do take years to make, and but you know, it's similar to. I mean, there are other like. I have a friend he's a chemist and he's a conservator at the Art Institute of Chicago, and his job is to like they figure out like they get a piece of artwork that has like some damage to it or staining or like they don't know what it's they're like what is this, and he spends his time trying to figure out like what's the chemical composition of this stain, what did it come from, how do we treat it, um, or if they need to preserve something. He's into it.
He's almost like a magician.
Yeah. Well, you do when you learn something really, really well, like that looks really chaotic. Like when you see like the weavers with like all the bobbins hanging down, it's like how the hell do they ever keep track of all that? Lots of experience. They know. I'm sure they know exactly where all that stuff is. You get used to it. To me, it looks confusing. Like, how do you know where you're doing it? But like they've been training for a long time, and so in that place, you can imagine that if you were like studying weaving at a university in the United States, and you're like, I want to go work there, it would be competitive to get into that place. That's like they got the best people. 'Cause they could choose whoever who are any like if they say like we have a job opening, you can imagine the number of applications they get for every people who would be desperate to work at that place. Because that would be like a weaver's dream to land a job at that place. And they're probably gonna. I'm sure they prioritize French weavers because that's a national treasure right there. That was established, in the 1600s, and it's still going. So that is a nice thing about older cultures. There's a paper mill in Italy called Fabriano, and they've been making paper since the late Middle Ages. They're still like it's the same pretty much. I mean, like more or less, it's the same company, it's the same brand. They make great paper. Okay, so yeah, and notice like there are no men weaving. Too clumsy. What do I do with it? That's I guess that's the upside of like what like weaving is something that when like it was something that women didn't get shut out of by men, and so then it just became like like that's something that like there are not that many men that weave. So yeah, except for the guy with the painting. Like I make a weaving on my painting. Charming. Okay. Um, thank you, everybody. I will get
Thank you.
I will get the next discussion board thing open for you soon, but you still have until midnight tonight to finish it if you haven't. Also that quiz. So and I will just slowly keep on grading.
What's due on the discussion board?
So tonight is the closing of the first discussion board.
Oh, got it.
So the one for like Egypt.
Okay.
Rome. And then I'm going to open another one that's like Middle Ages and Renaissance. That'll be due, I think, in a couple of weeks.
So just the word you gave us, correct?
Yes, that's going to be just the word. Like, you get a word and you do the definition.
Right.
But
Okay.
those aren't posted yet, are they?
Nope.
The next group is not posted.
Right. Not yet. It will be. But I figured I'd just wait until the other one closes rather than pile it on. Okay, so Joey's going to break down this door if I don't feed him. So, he's going to attack all of us. So you all have a nice night.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
That's aggressive.